Hey everybody, welcome to PC Perspective. I'm Ryan Schrout. Today we're going to give you my final review of both the new Microsoft Surface Pro 4 and the Microsoft Surface Book. A few weeks ago we gave you kind of a little preview, a little rundown of kind of feature overview and kind of a form factor overview. And now that I've spent the better part of 30 days with both of these devices, I kind of wanted to go over more detail about the designs, implementations, performance, pricing, and then actually give you my final thoughts on which of these two devices, if any, really makes sense for most consumers. So the first thing I want to talk about is the design, right? So as I mentioned before, the Surface Pro 4 is really just a continuation of the same design principles that have existed since the beginning of the Microsoft Surface platform. It has a kickstand design. It is a tablet in its truest form. The type cover that you see there with it is an additional add-on. It's actually a $160 accessory. I will say that the kickstand works surprisingly well. It is reliably strong. Like, you don't have to worry about it like sagging or anything like that. And if you move around on the table, it's not going to change its angle very much. The new version that's not like ratcheted now will smoothly transition from almost 90 degrees to almost 180 degrees. So you get a lot of range there. I like the magnesium body styling design. I like the coloring. I think it looks like a very high-end premium device. The kickstand presents one problem if you're actually using this laptop on your lap, if you will. The kickstand requires you to have more horizontal space on the surface that you're resting on, whether it be your legs or a tray table on an airplane or something like that. On a traditional desk environment, tables, it's not going to matter. But if you're trying to set it so the keyboard is on your lap and maybe you're trying to slide it further away so you have a better arm angle, it's possible the kickstand may just fall off of your knees and thus kind of making the device less useful. Like I said, styling wise, bezels are fantastic. It's a very, very good design on that. Now, if we look at the Surface Book, it is the new guy here. It has the very distinctive hinge. It's not really they don't call it a watch band hinge, but that's kind of what it looks like to us, is you have a watch band hinge design. It is a 2-in-1, but it only ships with the keyboard dock. You can't buy it with just the tablet itself. It is a little bit more angular. It's a little bit bigger. It's a 13.5-inch screen instead of a 12.5-inch screen, I believe. And as a result, it just feels bigger. You can tell even with them sitting side by side that it just looks and feels a little bit bulkier. It has the same magnesium body styling that I do like. It's a little bit thinner on the tablet side than the Surface Pro 4, but that's because the battery in this is a little bit smaller and they put a lot more battery in the base on that side. Overall, I think from just the looks and styling and design, I think both of these devices do really, really well. But the Surface Book is the one that's going to stand out in a crowd and people are going to recognize as something new. It would be difficult unless you're have a very trained eye to tell the difference between a Surface Pro 4, 3, etc. Touching on the screens, both are 3:2 aspect ratios, which is going to appear a little bit odd, and that is emphasized more on the Surface Book because of its larger size. You got a 3000 by 2000 resolution on the Surface Book, and a little bit smaller than that on the Surface Pro 4. I think it's 2700 by something, but it's still a 3:2 aspect ratio. At first it feels weird, especially coming from 16:9 devices, whether it be tablets or desktop PCs, but it actually works pretty well. You can see more of vertical space of PDF documents, web pages, etc. So the screen is very good, high quality, good color reproduction, touchscreen, 10-point touchscreen interface, very responsive in that regards. I think the screens on both the Surface devices are actually top notch. Both of them also come with the pen, the Surface Pen, right? So now it magnetically attaches to the side of the device. It writes very accurately. It's very responsive. I am not an artist. I don't draw particularly well, but I will say that it seems very responsive for taking notes. People that have more experience with Wacom tablets and that type of stuff have said that the Surface Pro 4 and Book have a much better digitizer than the Surface Pro 3 did, right? So the lines are straighter, the effects are a little bit closer to real time. So all indications are that this actually works really well. From my use case, from an office standpoint of taking notes, using it as an eraser and helping to keep track of things around the office or when I'm out on the road, taking notes at meetings and stuff like that, I actually do enjoy the experience of using the Microsoft Pen, the Surface Pen, quite a bit. The keyboards vary in a couple of ways. Obviously, the one on Surface Pro 4 is an optional keyboard. You don't have to buy it, but I think it's a requirement to make it a usable device. Even though it is a kind of a fabric cover. The keys and touchpad on the keyboard are actually really, really, really good. I was very surprised by how comfortable it was to type on. The key travel is pretty significant. It is backlit through like the sides of the keys. I would actually compare the typing experience on the Microsoft type cover to writing on my Dell XPS 13. Very, low profile key travel, but still very usable. The Surface Book is a much better design than even that. The keys are very tall. They have a lot of travel to them. It's very comfortable to type on. They're backlit internally, right? So you can actually see everything very well through it. And I would actually put the Surface Book's typing surface on par with the ThinkPad devices that I've used over the years, which actually says a lot from anybody that's seen any of my other reviews or podcasts where we talk about how much I do love the Lenovo ThinkPad keyboards. The touchpads are both good. They're both all glass, a little bit bigger on the Surface Book, and they both have a very distinctive click sound to them. Whether or not that gets on your nerves, I could see that either way. That tends to be the trend that we're seeing in modern notebooks. One note on the Surface Book, obviously it has the keyboard attachment in there. You can buy it with the discrete GPU or without. It is a GeForce GPU of some kind that they really never placed a brand to. As far as we can tell, it is most closely equated to a GeForce 9400M, 384 CUDA cores, 950 megahertz or so clock speed, but only 1 gig of memory, which is interesting because it very much limits its usefulness for high resolution gaming, and considering you have a 3000 by 2000 resolution screen, that can be a concern down the road. I will say that we'll talk about gaming performance in a little while. It's definitely improved with the discrete GPU over the version of this without it, or the Surface Pro 4. An odd little kind of addition. Nobody really expected either of these devices to have a discrete GPU, but it's useful for gaming. It's useful for people who are using OpenCL-enabled applications. If you use Adobe software, anything that's GPU accelerated, we'll see advantages there for sure. Real quick mention on connectivity and ports. Neither of these devices really have a lot of that. You have a mini display port on both. You have a micro SD card reader on the SP4 and a full-size SD card reader on the Surface Book. On the Surface Pro 4, you only get one USB 3.0 port. On the Book, you get two USB 3.0 ports. But other than that, you're kind of limited. You get an audio port, of course, and you have your power connection for the chargers and for the dock. But two USB ports on that and one on that. Yes, you have connectivity options. Yes, you can expand that with hubs or switches if you want. But if you're the type of person that normally carries a USB headset for Skype calls, or you carry a USB mouse for travel purposes, you might start looking at getting a Bluetooth mouse, something that can connect wirelessly, right? Where you don't have to waste one of your ports for that. I would like to see more of that, especially on the Surface Book, where it tend to have, looks like you have more space for it on the keyboard dock. I would have liked to have seen more connectivity options there. Battery life is interesting. On the Surface Pro 4, the only thing that has battery is the tablet part itself, nothing in the keyboard. In our battery test, we got 5.8 hours, which is actually pretty good. It's a little bit better than what we saw through the majority of last generation's kind of Broadwell Ultrabook style 2-in-1 devices, but still moderate, I would say. Modest to moderate benchmark results on our battery life test. The Surface Book did much better than that. We got 9.23 hours on our battery life test. Our battery life test, by the way, is just Wi-Fi, browser based. We use Chrome, which does use more battery, more energy to do what it does, but I think most of our readers and viewers are actually using Chrome instead of Edge, so I thought that was a more fair test. But to say 9.2 versus 5.8 is a dramatic difference in battery life, and a lot of that is because you got a small battery in the tablet part of the Surface Book, but you have a significant battery. I think it's 51 watt hours in the base and 18 watt hours in the tablet part for the Surface Book, and then I think you have a total of 40 watt hours or so on the Surface Pro 4, so you can see immediately why there would be such a big difference in battery life. Overall, the Surface Book really impressed me with that, and that's probably one of its biggest selling points for me as somebody who needs long battery life on laptops for travel. Portability and size-wise, the Surface Pro 4 is going to win that battle. It is thinner, it's lighter, it folds up kind of neater, it's flat, whereas the Surface Book, when it folds up, it has that weird gap at the hinge, right? So it's part of the hinge design that allows it to open up a little bit further than other 2-in-1 devices, but also creates an odd design to it. I actually think I like the way it looks, but I can see how others wouldn't, and I could also see how others would be concerned about I don't know, dust or liquids or particles or something getting into that gap even when the laptop of the Surface Book is closed. So something to keep in mind. Performance-wise, both of these platforms are using the Intel Skylake platform, so 6th generation Intel Core processors. They perform great and they do so very power efficiently. In general, both of these are configured with the Core i5 6300U processor, 8 gigs of RAM, and a 256 gig NVMe SSD, which is now a standard configuration option. Compared to my Dell XPS 13, which is a Core i5 platform. Both of these are about 25% faster in CPU metrics and maybe 20 to 30% faster in GPU tests if we look at just the integrated graphics portion of the test there. When you look at gaming though, it's an interesting discussion to have, right? Should you expect to be doing gaming on an XPS 13 or Surface Pro 4? I would say not really. You know, moderate gaming, if you want to play Rocket League, if you want to play Team Fortress 2, if you want to play those types of mainstream consumer games, you can do it. The Surface Book, with its, if you get a model with the discrete GPU integrated in it, actually gets about twice the gaming performance as the integrated graphics. So anything that you wanted to run at a higher resolution or higher image quality, you're going to be able to do if you get the version of this with the discrete GPU in it. Now, that being said, you have to worry about a couple of other things. One is these are 3x2 displays, and some games just don't know what the hell to do with that, right? It's been so long since we've had 3x2 displays that are really used for gaming that some games just have no support for 3x2 resolutions. So we either have vertical or horizontal bars rather across the top and the bottom of the game if you run at, you know, 1080p or you run at 1400 by 900 or something like that. And other games may just kind of refuse to run. And we saw that in a couple of instances as well. You can fix that by going into Windows, changing the actual resolution of the display, and then the game will work. But then it may screw up, you know, your icons or your windows or something if you're worried about position and placement there. None of these should be considered a gaming machine, but for my money, if you are interested in doing any of that type of stuff while on the road, having the Surface Book with the discrete GPU in there will definitely add to your enjoyment, I guess, and being able to play a little bit better, a little bit higher frame rates at better image quality settings on a screen that is actually super nice in that regard. Now let's talk about pricing, because this is where things get a little dicey for Microsoft's new Surface devices. The Surface Pro 4, as we have it configured, is $1299. That is without the addition of the type cover, which is another $160. So you go from $1,300 to about $1,450, $1,470 for that device. The Surface Book, configured with the exact same processor, memory, SSD, and no discrete GPU, is $1,699. So you're paying anywhere from $100 to $200 more for the Surface Book with its larger screen, better keyboard, trackpad, those types of additions, you know, additional USB port, versus a Surface Pro 4 with the type cover. Now you add in a discrete GPU, what's that going to cost you? The exact same configuration of this that's $1,699 without a discrete GPU is $1,899 with it. That's pretty hard to to agree with, right? A $200 upcharge for essentially a GeForce 940M with 1 gig of memory is, to put it nicely, like, it's just way too much. Like, there's no reason it should be that much of an upcharge. Obviously, there's other technology that goes into it. You know, the software and the hardware has to be a little bit more intelligent about how it disables one GPU when you disconnect it and take it off into tablet mode, but that's really built into it. Like, the development cost is already in there. So I would find it hard to recommend anybody to actually spend $200 additional to get the version with the integrated GPU, unless you know you have a use for it, whether it be gaming, or probably it should have to be gaming and work related, like Adobe applications, OpenCL, compute stuff, where you know you're going to be able to get $200 worth of value out of that mobile GPU being in there through the life of the device. Also, in terms of pricing, both of those prices are steep. The new Lenovo Y900, which is, I'm sorry, Yoga 900, is a Core i7 based Skylake 2-in-1. It's a Yoga, so it splits in half, or it doesn't split in half. It bends over all the way in half. It has tent mode. It's a 2-in-1 convertible, essentially. It has very similar specs otherwise, but it has a faster processor, and you can buy that for $1199. So you're looking at a $200 to $300 premium over what the Surface Pro 4 is, and probably $400 to $500 premium over what the Surface Book offers for similar CPU performance specifications. Now there's display differences, there's the fact that you have a pen digitizer on this. There are a handful of other things that, in my opinion, make the Surface devices a little bit better than that Yoga device, but is it $400 more, $500 more valuable? I don't know if that's the case. The truth is both the Surface Pro 4 and the Surface Book are flagship devices built by Microsoft in an attempt to kind of show OEMs and customers that Windows devices can be cool, they can be neat, they can be sexy, they can set trends, they can do things that are interesting and unique in a world where they have to compete against the Apple, the mindset, right, of MacBooks kind of being the flagship of everything, the top-notch notebooks that exist. So in my mind, I think people are willing to pay a little bit more for a device that is better looking, feels nicer, and is kind of considered that flagship aspirational product. Maybe these are a little bit too steep in that direction, but I do like what Microsoft has gone down that path with. And Intel has spent a lot of time working with Microsoft to make sure the hardware and software are working together really, really well. These were the first platforms we did our Intel SpeedShift testing on, right? So you have that capability in these devices going forward. A couple of other quick notes to mention. On the Surface Book, the mechanism to take apart the tablet from the keyboard, not 100% perfect, right? It works and it works well most of the time. It's kind of a satisfying mechanism, electrical, mechanical mechanism to remove it and replace it. I did, however, get a couple of blue screens over the 30 days of using it where I hit the button on the keyboard, but and you could hear the mechanical latch dislodge, but the software wasn't ready for me to pull the tablet apart, and maybe I took it out too early, and as a result, you get a little frowny face blue screen, and you know, if you're working on anything, that gets lost, or you go into a recovery status for that. We also had issues with standby. You know, we had seen reports of people talking about standby battery consumption being too high. That was actually, I think it's been fixed with new firmware and new Windows updates. I know we have that working on the Surface Book, and I think we just needed to have one more round of updates on our Surface Pro 4 to get that working, but I think they have that just about ironed out if they haven't done so already, but obviously that's a crucial thing. You don't want to put it in your backpack and have it come out warm or come out with 25% battery than when you put it in there the night before, so they should work on that. They'll also have an optional Surface dock right here that gives you 2 more mini display ports, 4 more USB ports, gigabit Ethernet and audio, which is if you want to have this as your primary machine, you can set this on your desk, hook up your monitor and keyboard to it, and charge it at the same time. I think that's like a $200 accessory. And again, I think if you're going to make this your only machine, that's actually a pretty awesome add-on to include with that. So overall, both the Surface Pro 4 and Surface Book, I know I've talked for a while now about these products. I actually really like them. Despite their prices being a little bit too high, I think both of them have places in the market in order to kind of set that standard for Microsoft Windows products. For me, my money would go to the Surface Book. I would probably get this same configuration, a Core i5 6300U, 256 gig NVMe SSD, 8 gigs memory, but I probably wouldn't get the NVIDIA integrated GPU. That's going to be $1699. Fairly expensive, but I like the design, I like the keyboard, I like the battery life. Everything about it is actually pretty impressive in the long run. So hopefully we'll be able to keep this around and do some further evaluation on it, and maybe try to make it my full-time working machine, moving between home and the office through using something like the Surface Dock. So I'm curious to see what you guys think. Leave your comments below. Do you think these devices are too expensive? Do they set the bar too high? Is it going to be impossible for other OEMs to kind of match it? Or do you think Microsoft has made a mistake really getting into the hardware business, or continuing to get into the hardware business with this new round of Surface devices? Make sure you go to PCPer.com as well. We have our full written review of this. We've got benchmarks, battery testing, more evaluation on the design and what I liked and did not like about everything involving the Surface Pro and Surface Book. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time.